Welcome to Straightforward Estate Planning with Pedrani Law.
Hello and welcome to Straightforward Estate Planning with Pedrani Law. Keith Pedrani is the founder of Pedrani Law, LLC, and an attorney licensed in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. He helps individuals and families protect what they've built through clear, practical estate, probate, and Medicaid planning. I'm Evan Mack, and in today's episode, we're looking at how Medicaid fits into the bigger estate planning picture and what families can do now to preserve assets while still qualifying for care when they need it. How you doing, Keith?
Doing great, Evan. Thank you for that introduction.
Absolutely. This is going to be Medicaid planning in New Jersey and New York, protecting these assets without losing eligibility. Keith, most people don't think about Medicaid until a parent needs nursing home or a kind of care like that. When those conversations start, what usually catches families off guard?
Unfortunately, Evan, the difficult thing to discuss is that it's often too late to engage in a lot of meaningful planning. There certainly are not zero options at that point. But the options are heavily reduced when the need for care is imminent, unfortunately. So, what catches people off guard is, certainly the limitation of options due to mainly to the 5-year look back period.
Before we talk about rules or look back periods, what is the biggest misconception you see about how Medicaid actually works for people?
The biggest misconception I think people have is that Medicaid is only for the poor,
Mhm.
which is just not true. With proper planning, uh, you don't need to be impoverished to be on Medicaid. People are often pretty shocked by the resource limits, but are similarly surprised about the planning options that are available to them. Again, as long as they're outside of the look back period.
Can you explain that look back period in plain language, what it is, how far it reaches, and why the timing of it matters so much?
Sure. So the look back period is 5 years, and what the government is looking at is any transfers out of your personal assets that are made for no other discernible purpose other than qualifying for Medicaid. So it basically any transfer that you make during that time, they're going to divide the value of that transfer. So let's say that you transferred your home uh, 2 years before you need treatment. The government is going to say, we're going to take the value. Let's say you transferred it without consideration to one of your children, thinking that that's going to take the asset out of your estate for Medicaid purposes or prevent Medicaid recovery. All they're going to do in that case is take what the market value of the house was at the time of the transfer. They're going to divide it by the cost of uh, care, and you're going to have a penalty period that's the result of that math problem. So the purpose is to disincentivize people from making those type of transfers because it's not going to benefit you. It's going to result in a penalty for as you if you're otherwise eligible, you'll be penalized from that point. So it's a strong disincentivization against that type of behavior, which is the point.
Some families try to move assets out of their names quickly to qualify. Well, what kinds of mistakes do you see when people take that do it yourself approach?
Again, transferring assets without consideration, transferring money with no discernible purpose other than qualifying for Medicaid. Uh, the the DIY approach is problematic because the government's seen everything, so they've been actively closing loopholes on this, especially for years. If you think you have a creative strategy that they have not dealt with before, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, it's probably not. I mean, there may be that 0.01% chance that you've thought of something that's not in the rule book, but chances are it's something that they've dealt with, and it's something that
Mhm.
there is a hard and fast rule on. And even if there's not a hard and fast rule on it, the caseworker can rule one way or another on it. But uh, basically, it's making those transfers within that look back period. And typically, if you're doing a DIY approach, you're not doing something like an irrevocable trust or making transfers that are for legitimate purposes other than qualifying for Medicaid uh, when you're doing it yourself.
When you help clients plan ahead, what legal tools like trust or transfers can protect these assets without causing penalties? What things do you teach them to kind of help them out?
So if we have a client that has time, meaning we think that there's certainly 5 years or more before they'll need treatment, that's really the ideal client. Uh, then you have many options open to you. The best is certainly an irrevocable trust, so we're able to move assets out of your name and into the ownership of the irrevocable trust. And I'll kind of answer one of the questions you asked before with the DIY. Uh, the distinction between an irrevocable trust and a revocable trust is very important here. Placing an asset in a revocable trust is not going to help for Medicaid planning purposes. The government essentially disregards ownership in a revocable trust because you can revoke it at any time and it can revert to individual ownership. Once you pass away, the surrogates court certainly recognizes it and it can avoid probate in a revocable trust. But for purposes of ownership, there's really not a distinction there for Medicaid purposes. The asset needs to be moved into an irrevocable trust, and that needs to be done outside of the 5 year look back period. And the, the the transfers, Evan, can really be for any amount as long as they're outside of that look back period, meaning that if you think you have too many assets, too much money to qualify for Medicaid, you may not. The transfers being made are not looked at rather at all if they're outside of that 5 year window.
Can you share a story about a client who planned early and how that preparation changed the outcome for their family?
So just a general example that what I just addressed, that coming before care, the need for care is imminent, gives us the best option. So you have the ability to place assets into an irrevocable trust. There's also certain exemptions. If, again, most people, I'm speaking generally, there are, of course, many permutations of this, and everyone has different planning needs. But generally speaking, most people are worried about their primary residence and they're worried about what happens to the primary residence after they pass away, if it can be subject to estate recovery. So that's the primary concern for most clients. So that's what I'm speaking to. Uh, there's been another example where it was applicable for the caregiver exception, where you have someone in the family who moves in, who delays the need for care
Hmm.
for multiple years, and then the house can be transferred to them, and it's not considered a penalized transfer. Now, I'm grossly oversimplifying that, and you have to meet certain requirements, and there should be documentation of this. But generally speaking, this is kind of, again, it's not a benevolent exception by any stretch. It's the government essentially saying if you can delay the need for care for 2 years, in other words, spare us the expense for 2 years, then you can receive property like the house, as long as you were living in it and actually did delay care. So those are kind of the best examples, and then of course, unfortunately, most it's limited to annuity planning and kind of last minute options like that, which aren't that's not where you want to be. So,
Hmm.
there's always something that can be done. I don't want to give the impression that, oh, if you're within the look back period, there's nothing that can be done. That's not true. The point is though that you have significantly more and significantly better options if you start planning early.
For anyone listening who hasn't thought about Medicaid yet, what's one simple first step to make sure they're not caught unprepared later on, and about all the things we've been talking about? How can they help themselves early?
Make an appointment for a consultation, whether that's with me or another attorney that specializes in this area. Usually, I mean, I offer free consultations. Most attorneys do, even if the consultation is for a nominal fee. It's worth it for you to just hear your options. So, lay out your situation, meaning, lay out your assets, what you would like to happen, your concerns about needing care if it happens. It's usually going to provide insight that you wouldn't have otherwise had. And even if you don't move forward with planning necessarily, they might point you in the direction of long-term care insurance or, some other way to address this need. But the point is, the earlier the better, and seek professional advice. And I would also say, if I know it's difficult to commit this kind of time to it, but considering the importance of it, I think it's worth it. I would get the advice, at least preliminary advice, from more than one professional. So you're going to want more than one perspective on this. There's no, professionals agree on many things, but everyone has their own different nuanced take and might have a different solution for your specific situation. So, look into long-term care insurance and seek out the advice of multiple professionals early. Again, I'll keep emphasizing that because with Medicaid planning, that really is the name of the game.
Awesome. Keith, my brother, appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Evan. Take care.
All right, guys, that's it for today's episode of Straightforward Estate Planning with Pedrani Law. To learn more about Keith's work or to schedule a consultation, like he said, visit PedraniLaw.com. You'll find clear guidance on estate, probate, and Medicaid planning for families across New Jersey and New York. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who might need it. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.